Hey everyone, welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. This is your host, Stacey Lauren. All right, guys. Well, this is exciting. I am in this new group. I decided that I'm ready to turn Do the Thing into a business. This started out as just merely a research project for my book and has turned into something that I love and enjoy. And I joined this group through Ryan Moran's network, capitalism.com. And basically, it's going to help me kind of figure out my best steps to be able to turn this into a business. And through that, I actually posted something in one of his groups and asked the people in the group who would be interested in kind of talking to me about a bucket list, because I recently interviewed Laura Carney on my podcast, and she just wrote the book My Father's List, which is basically her talking about finding her father's bucket list after he passed away. And she spent 5 years doing all the items on his list and then wrote a book about it. And that's coming out in the summer. She was also on the expert panel for the Do the Thing Start a Book Challenge. And she's all kinds of amazing. And we're going to be doing an expert panel on the bucket list. So with that, since I'm going to be starting a new challenge, I am exploring this idea of a bucket list. And guess what happens when you say you're doing something and someone else is interested in that thing? They say, yes, interview me on your podcast. I'd love to talk to you about bucket lists. And that's how this next interview came to be. So Jason is someone that's in the same group as me, and he said he was interested in chatting with me about it. And that's what we're doing here. And I love that I'm able to now explore this with someone I haven't met yet, only that we're in the same group. And so that's what I love about this podcast is I get to meet new people. It gives me a vehicle to be able to do that. So I am welcoming Jason to the show. Hey, Jason.
Hi there, Stacey. How's it going?
I am good. How are you?
Doing pretty good, thanks.
Good. How cool is this? We get to just chat about bucket lists. I mean, when do you ever get a chance to just randomly talk to people about stuff that's cool?
Yeah, not all that often, surprisingly.
Yeah, it kind of gives you, and it's funny because I'm in the middle of planning the Start a Podcast Challenge. And this is one of the things I tell people that I love about the podcast is it gives you a vehicle and a reason to be able to just to have these kinds of conversations that are things that are interesting and you get to explore more.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it today.
Well, why don't we start off with when I posted what I did in the group, why you said, yeah, I'm interested. Let's chat.
So I don't think of myself as somebody who has a bucket list per se. I think of it more as an opportunity list.
Ooh.
But I've been checking off a lot of things from that list lately. So when you mentioned talking about a bucket list, I thought, you know what, I'm sort of right in the middle of doing a bunch of these things. So yeah, let's talk about it.
That is so cool. I'd love to hear, do you have this list? Is it a physical list?
No, not really. I think most of it is just something that floats around in my head. And honestly, a lot of it doesn't even come up until something sparks the idea of it. Whether it's musicians or places to see or whatever, I don't necessarily go actively looking for things to put on the list.
Yeah.
But it's just if something comes up, and that's why I think of it as an opportunity list. If the opportunity comes up, I think, oh yeah, absolutely. Why would I not do this?
So it sounds like you're just saying yes more to things that happen, which is kind of how we met, right? Where you're like, yeah, sure, interview me on your podcast.
Yeah, that is definitely part of it. But part of it is also that yes has to have some sort of a meaning to it. It's not just going to be any random thing that somebody says like, oh, what about doing this? There has to be some sort of draw to it for me. But
yeah,
when there is, it's like, oh yeah, absolutely. That's a definite yes.
Well, let's start off with how it started. So what was the first thing that you did that was like, okay, this is cool. This feels good to me?
I mean, we could go way, way back.
Let's do it.
So all 5 of my mom's brothers went to Penn State University. So from the moment I was old enough to understand pretty much anything, Penn State was always one of those things. Everybody had a blue and white room in their house. Penn State football games were always on TV. I ended up going to Penn State myself. And right around when I was 6 or 7 years old, Penn State won the 1995 Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And so growing up, Penn State football was always one of the main things. I always thought going to see the Rose Bowl and have Penn State playing in it is something that I always wanted to do. So that was sort of like the start of my bucket list before I ever even knew what a bucket list was. It was just something that I always wanted to do. And then from there, some other things just started coming up because they were things that just happened to be things I wanted to do for a long time. They just sort of stuck to the list. So now I've been checking off a lot of the things that I've always thought about doing for a long time. And the things that I haven't checked off yet, I'm actually starting to consider it more now that I'm quote unquote adult and have some expendable money to be able to afford to go do these things.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you first were saying it, I was thinking, oh, you must have more confidence to be able to now do these things that you've been wanting to do. But you're saying it's more about the money and being able to have the money to do them.
It's a little bit of both. So as a millennial, I didn't have money when I was younger. And not that I'm old now, I just turned 35, but I started a new job about a year and a half ago that gave me a pretty nice increase in salary compared to my previous jobs. So when something comes up, it's less of a thought of, oh, can I afford this? It's like, let me just double check and make sure that everything is what I think it is before I say yes, but I'm probably going to say yes. So there's less planning around things now, but part of it also is the confidence where growing up, I never really went on big vacations. So I didn't fly until I was like 24 years old. I was with a friend going on a vacation out to Denver, Colorado, where I live now. And I just sort of followed his path. He flew a bunch of times. So I'm just like, you know what you're doing. I'll just go wherever you go. Tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
So once that happened, I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't bad. Then I moved out to Denver. And so I'm originally from Pennsylvania. So I would go back home once or twice a year. So I'd be flying by myself. And yeah, there is that confidence of just being used to traveling, especially by yourself, where it turns into not a big deal. Even if it's to a place that you've never been before, it's just like, oh, it's just a flight. It's just going through an airport. The airports are different, but they all work the same way. There is signs that tell you where to go. So it's not really that big of a deal. And then I think the third part that helps this a lot is just the way that technology has changed the way that people do things. 20, 30 years ago, you didn't have things like Airbnb to stay somewhere besides a hotel. So instead of paying $200 a night, stay somewhere, I might only be paying $200 for my entire trip to stay somewhere, which makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, you're speaking to something that I talk about a lot, and I'm glad that this is coming up in relation to traveling, because a lot of times people think that there's people that are traveling that just all of a sudden just go out and do this crazy stuff, right? But they don't realize sometimes you just have to put the training wheels on to get started. And it sounds like that's what you did by being able to follow along with your friend, because you got to see what the process was like. You got to feel comfortable. You got to feel confident, and you're flexing the muscle to be able to do it. And now through that movement and that momentum, you're experienced and you're comfortable just kind of going wherever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was 20, I wouldn't have been doing stuff like this because I would think I have no idea how to get through an airport. I don't know what it's like to fly, but yeah, having that experience now, it's like, oh yeah, no big deal.
And I want to parallel this for a minute, because the other thing that I've been talking a lot about on the podcast is what gets in most people's way in anything, whether it's business or traveling or whatever, insert whatever it is that you want to do, that thing you want to do. It's like wanting to plan every step and making sure everything's figured out before you start. But it sounds like now that you've built the confidence up in doing it, you're being more open to figuring it out as you go.
Yes and no. I am a bit more open to that, but I'm also just analytical by nature. So I very much plan out my stuff as much as possible, but I know that I only need a week or two to make that happen. So I'm not one of those spontaneous people where it's a Wednesday night and somebody says like, hey, let's go to Vegas Friday for the weekend. That's probably not going to be something I do. But if it's like, do you want to go to Vegas in a month? Yeah, I could make that work. That gives me enough time to make sure that I have all my ducks in a row, basically.
Yeah. And I love that you're speaking to that because there's people listening that are in all different kinds of schools of thought, right? And I think about this from a business perspective, since that's how we met, through wanting to grow a brand and kind of be in that way. And there's some people that I have on the podcast that started a business and they burn the boats. They're all in, they quit the job, they're going 100% into their business. And then there's other people, they keep their job and they use their business as a side hustle, kind of like having a life raft until they're ready to actually move forward and quit the job and then do the business full time. And I feel like it's so important, like what you're saying with traveling, to know yourself, to know which way you like to go, but it's not stopping you from moving. You're still moving and you're in momentum. You're just doing it in the way that you know that works the best for you.
Yeah, for me, I'm analytical, so my movements are calculated when I do these things. But I know that as long as I could get to an 80% position of, yeah, I can make this work, then I'll just do it. And then figure out the rest later as I need to.
So is this opportunity list, is this a way for you to get out of your comfort zone and be able to explore that more?
So not my personal opportunity list. That's more of just doing things that I really enjoy doing. So I'm a big baseball fan. I would love to go see a baseball game at every single stadium in the country.
Oh, that's cool.
So as of right now, I think I'm up to 7 or 8. Actually, I think it's 7. And then in May, I'm going to Houston to visit a friend. And so that'll be my 8th. So eventually I want to get to all of them. I'm also a big concert person. Dave Matthews Band is my favorite band, and I've seen them over 80 times.
Oh, wow.
So I've traveled pretty much all over the country to see Dave Matthews Band, and that they were part of that bucket list / opportunity list. Back when I first got into the band back in the mid 2000s, I was learning a lot about them and seeing all these different concerts that they were performing and all these different places that they were performing. And I heard about this place called The Gorge out in Washington State. It's about 2 hours east of Seattle. It's in the middle of nowhere. But every single year, Dave Matthews Band would play 3 nights there over Labor Day weekend. And it was sort of the mecca of the D&B world, where if you could only go to one place, make it The Gorge and go there.
Yeah.
They put on some of the best concerts all year there. And it's just this super scenic venue, just this concert stage plopped down in the middle of nowhere on the edge of the Columbia River Gorge. And there's literally like a 300-foot drop at the back of the stage going down to the river. It's a beautiful place. They have camping there if you want to camp. But that was another thing that was just like, at some point in life, I need to get out there. And 2 years ago, I did that. It was a little delayed because of COVID, but in 2021, I had all the plans ready in 2020, and then COVID happened and pushed everything back a year. But I had a place to stay through Airbnb. I had a car rental on Turo, which is basically the Airbnb for cars. I had my concert tickets. I just had to book a flight. And then at that point, it was like, okay, so I'm flying to Seattle by myself, but I've flown to Pennsylvania by myself a dozen times already. So what's the big deal about just going somewhere else? And yeah, it was a fantastic experience. One of the best trips I've ever taken. I will absolutely be going back there at some point, but I went there because that was what I really loved. And it was a different experience involving something that I really loved. So it's not really opening up new things, new opportunities as far as new experiences that I've never done before. Not like skydiving or something like that. But yeah, it's more of just doing things that I really love.
Yeah, I love that.
It is another list, though, that me and some friends are starting to do things where they're things that we haven't done yet.
Ooh.
So.
All right, we're going to go back there. I want to talk about that more for sure. Yeah, that's cool.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We're putting a little pin there because I want to go there. I wanted to ask you too about that trip because you mentioned having the plans ready. So is that all you're doing is you're just finding your place to stay? You mentioned Airbnb, you're getting the car rental with Turo, and then you're getting the concert tickets. So that's the pre-work. And then when you get there is when you're kind of figuring out what else you're going to do, or are you just going specifically for the concert?
So when I do travel, I have some reason for traveling, whether it's a concert or going to a baseball game or something like that. I'm not the type of person who wants to go to Florida and just sit in the sand on the beach all day long for an entire week and do nothing.
Yeah.
That sounds awful to me. I need to be doing stuff. So as far as going out to the gorge, that was really the only thing that I went out there for. I did have an extra day afterwards where I went on a hike in the forest, not far from where I stayed, but that was just something that I decided that weekend, like, oh, well, what do I want to do on Monday after concerts? I have the whole day, I'll figure out something. But then there's other times where I do try and plan a bit more. For example, this past winter, I went out to Los Angeles. Penn State was actually in the Rose Bowl this year.
Wow.
And because of the way that the rules are changing with college football coming up, I thought, you know what, it could be 30 years before they ever get back into the Rose Bowl because there isn't going to be a guarantee for them to play in it like there was this year. So I thought, you know what, I have the money, I have the flexibility with work. Let me take advantage of it now. So that's where I come up with the opportunity list, where it's on the list of things I want to do. Now I have the opportunity to actually make it happen. So I'm going to take it. So I went out to Los Angeles for 5 or 6 days. I could have just made it 2 days and gone for the football game and that was it. But I'd never been to Los Angeles before. So I wanted to spend some time in town and do some things around there. So I planned to make sure to get to some museums that I was interested in, go out to Malibu, Long Beach, things like that. There were a couple hockey games while I was there that I went to. So I made sure that I planned to have 5 days worth of stuff to do. Because if I didn't, there really wouldn't be a reason to stay out there and be spending money on a car and a place to stay if I'm just going to be sitting around. At that point, I could have just made it a 2-day trip, but I purposely spent the extra time to be out there and do things that are LA things because I don't know when I would be going back.
So there's something really cool about what you're doing. Well, number one, because you're getting to do things that you love. I think that's great. But thinking about people that it's comfortable to sit on your couch, right? And watch Netflix and just kind of relax and save your money and not go anywhere. When you think of what a lot of people want to do, whenever I post at any groups, like, what are you yearning to do? It's always something about travel. But it's hard for people to do it and to do the thing, to actually go out and travel because it is more comfortable to not go anywhere. And so what you're doing is by coming up with these things that you like to do, you're almost giving yourself an accountability device by saying, oh, I like going to this concert or I like going to this game. And it kind of makes you get the ticket, get the flight. And then if you want to travel and do more things, you're able to, almost like if you were to book a half marathon, when you schedule that, it's in that same arena because that's going to make you run. I think you having this plan, it's making you get to travel and then you love it when you're doing it.
Yeah, traveling for concerts or for games or anything else, it gives you the reason to make that trip. Because this year, for example, Dave Matthews Band is not playing in Denver. So at least not scheduled yet. They might in the fall, but nothing this summer. So if I want to see them, I would have to travel somewhere. So I travel back home to Pennsylvania when they play near Philadelphia because that's the closest that they play to my hometown. But that's when I go back home. It's when they're in town. And so if I want to see them more, then I am going to see them more when I go to Houston. They're going to be playing in Houston. So I got my friend tickets. He asked me to order some and he ended up with an extra because his wife can't go. And it's like, yo, why don't you just come down to Houston for the weekend? We'll go to the concert. The Astros are in town. We'll go to a game and then we'll do whatever else you want to do around town. So as of a month ago, I wasn't planning to go to Houston this year, but now I am. I just bought my flight 2 days ago.
Is there anything else you wanted to speak to regarding doing the things you love in this bucket list, opportunity list conversation?
Yeah. So one thing that, especially when I was younger and when people around my age at that time, we were just coming out of college, usually had good jobs, didn't have a lot of money. I was still going to 8 Dave Matthews Band concerts in a single year. And I would tell people this and they would ask me, like, how the hell do you go to so many concerts? Like, how do you afford this? And I would tell them that I don't drink. So I'm not spending $30, $40, $50 every weekend out at the bar. If you don't go out to drink twice, there's a concert ticket. And I've literally had people tell me no, that they want to drink. It's like, okay, well then don't be complaining that you don't have money to go to this concert when this musician comes to town or whatever. The money's there. You're just choosing to buy beer with it instead.
Ooh, that's a quotable right there.
Right?
It's really
and part of that is just I'm allergic to alcohol. So most things that I drink that contain alcohol make me feel like crap. But even if it wasn't for that, it's still true though. If you just don't do that a couple of times, if you go out every single weekend for 3 months, you're spending a lot of money. Just take one weekend out of those 3 months and not go out. Now you have money for your concert ticket and a beer at the concert. And it's not that big of a deal to not drink for a weekend. Take that money and experience something rather than just the same handful of bars that you go to every single weekend. And also when it comes to money, like I was saying before with Airbnb and Turo, these didn't exist even 10 years ago for the most part, where now you could travel for so much less money than it would cost a few years ago. When I went out to Los Angeles, my Airbnb, I was staying about 10 minutes east of Pasadena. So I was about a half hour outside of downtown Los Angeles. The room that I was renting was like $45 a month. If I wanted to stay in the hotel that the team was staying at in downtown Los Angeles, it was like $190 a night. So I had my entire stay for less money than 2 nights at the team hotel.
Wow.
My car Ontario was like $340 total for 6 days. If I went through Enterprise, it would have been double that. So you also have to be willing to not have things be perfect. The Airbnb that I was staying in, was it the most glamorous place? No, not by any means. But it had a bed that was comfortable enough to get a good night's sleep on. It had a shower and a toilet that worked. It had hot water. That's all I needed.
Yeah.
I left the Airbnb for the day. I was gone for 10 to 12 hours because I was going to museums and driving around and going to events like a hockey game or a football game. So it didn't matter that there wasn't a kitchen that I had access to because I wasn't going to be cooking there anyway. The room was like somebody's kid's old bedroom with princess stickers on the wall. Who cares? It's a comfortable, safe place to stay. That's all that matters. And if that's where you need to stay to be able to afford to take a trip, then so be it. You don't need to spend $200 a night staying downtown Los Angeles when you can stay 30 minutes away for a quarter of the price and just drive a half hour. It's super simple to do that. And it made the trip so much more affordable. If I tried to do it the old-fashioned way, how you'd have to do it 10, 15 years ago even, staying in a hotel and renting a car from the airport, it would have been a $2,000 trip. I paid like $1,200 for everything, including my game ticket.
That's great. You're really showing people how just with a little bit of extra thought process, you can really multiply the things that you're doing.
Yeah, as long as you're flexible on the details, you can make so much more happen.
Before we move on, can you just talk to our analytical friends for a minute and the ones that really think they need every step to be perfect before they get going? What would you say to them? Or maybe they're nervous about starting to travel. What would you say to them?
Yeah. I mean, if you've never traveled before, it definitely does help having somebody there who's done it before that you travel with at least once. But try and give yourself time and plan it out as much as possible. When I was going to Los Angeles, I only had about 3 weeks to plan the whole trip just because Penn State didn't know that they were going to be in the bowl game until 3 weeks prior. So that could definitely be a stressful time trying to figure out, like, I didn't even know how to get tickets for the Rose Bowl at the time. But the trip to Seattle to see Dave Matthews Band at the Gorge, that was something that I had been thinking about for a few years at that point. and I had talked to other people who have done it. I had an idea of what was needed to be done. And I also had started saving money at that point too, to pay for all of it. So it was just a matter of basically having a checklist of what do I need for this trip. I need concert tickets. I need a flight. I need a car rental. I need an Airbnb to stay at. So let me go one at a time. The flight you don't have to worry about because there's tons of planes that go there. And they also don't even let you book like a year in advance. But I got my Airbnb the year beforehand as soon as I could, basically, because I knew that there's only so many places to stay. I wanted to make sure I had the right place for me. Same with the car. I got that as soon as I could. And I did a lot of research on where I would stay. It wasn't just looking at the first place that popped up and like, okay, yeah, I'll stay there. No, I would spend a couple hours looking at different listings and have tabs open for all the ones that I initially thought were good. And then I would look through them again and close some of them. They're like, oh, well, this one's not as good as that one, so let me close this. And then it gets down to 10 listings and then 5 listings. And then it's the final 3. And it's like, all right, well, I need to pick one of these. And the one that I stayed at had 2 cats. So it's like, all right, yeah, I'd rather stay with the place with the cats than no animals. So that was kind of the deciding factor.
Yeah, I like the way you're picking it. You're not picking what you want. You're picking what you don't want, which is eliminating, is helping you get what you want almost, unless you see something that immediately strikes you.
Yeah, like I said before, I don't really care if there's a kitchen at a place that I'm staying at, because generally when I'm traveling, I'm going out doing stuff and I want to eat local food anyway. So it doesn't matter if there's a kitchen or not. I'm probably not going to use it. I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to stuff like that. So yeah, I just pick, is it in a good location that I would be happy with? Does it look like it's a nice place to stay? With Airbnb, they have what they call super hosts, which are the best of the best. I think it's only about 8 or 9% of all of their hosts are considered super hosts. And with that, the way that they earn that title is they have to have so many reservations with a 5-star review. They can't have any cancellations within the past 12 months, unless it was some sort of extenuating circumstance, like there was a hurricane or something like that. Mm-hmm. They have a long history of providing very good service to the people that stay with them. So personally, when I travel, I look for a super host first and foremost. And yeah, maybe there is some other great listing that I don't see, but I know with the super host, I know what I'm getting. I'm going to get a great experience there. So yeah, for anybody who's thinking about traveling and hasn't really tried it at all, and I know there's so many people that say that Airbnb is horrible, that there's so many horror stories and all this, and not really. I actually used to work for Airbnb a few years ago. The problems that come up are so few and far between that all of the articles, the clickbait articles that you see online, the 10 stories that they talk about are what comes out of a million different reservations. There's that few problems.
Wow, that's great.
Don't be scared about traveling in Airbnb as long as you're smart about it. Don't pick the brand new listing that doesn't have any reviews, that is in a sketchy neighborhood. Yeah, that might not be a good experience. But if you find a super host who has 200 reviews and they're responsive and the place is, it's nice, it's clean, you're going to have a good stay there. And you're also going to save $300 probably versus staying at a hotel.
All right. I'd love to switch gears and I'd love to talk to you about the new thing that you're doing with your friends. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So a couple months ago, I saw a video either on Facebook or on Instagram. And this guy was talking about how it was him, his son, a friend of his, and his friend's son, that they went hiking somewhere. And he made a comment to his friend about how there's 7 billion people on this planet and we're probably the only 4 on this mountain right now.
Oh, wow.
And he was talking to his friend who had mentioned that he had done all this other stuff too. And his friend said that what I do is once every other month, I do something that I've never done before, whether it's taking the kids somewhere that we haven't gone before, like going fishing somewhere or Maybe it's taking a painting class or something like that, or going skydiving. He said, I do that once every 2 months. I'll take one weekend every 2 months and do something different. And he said, that's 6 things every year. If you live for another 40 years, that's 240 things that you experience that you might not have experienced otherwise. And I thought, man, that is a really cool thought. And so I brought it up to a friend group that I'm in, and I had them listen to the video, and I asked them if they would be interested in doing something like that. And they all said yes. This was just about a month and a half ago, maybe. So we haven't done anything, but we're currently working on putting together a list of things that we would like to do that we haven't done, or that we think somebody else might like to do. And that way we'll check off all the things that we're interested in. And at some point we'll say, hey, who wants to do this in 2 weeks? And we'll go do that. So maybe it's skydiving at some point. Maybe it's go-kart racing. Maybe it's getting inner tubes and floating down a river here in Denver. Maybe it's whitewater rafting. There's a ton of different things that we have on the list, including plays that come through Denver, like Aladdin is going to be at a theater downtown in the summer. So I haven't seen Aladdin. I've only seen 2 Broadway plays ever. And I haven't been to this theater. So yeah, that would be something interesting and different to do. So we haven't gotten it together in a while just because people have been out of town and stuff. But in the next week or two, when we get together again, we usually do dinners on Monday nights. So the next time that we get together, we're going to talk about it some more and put together the list a bit more and see what we want to do coming up. But I think it's going to be a really good thing, because there's so many times that I've thought about doing things and didn't have anybody to do it with. And it's like, well, I don't really feel like doing it by myself. Maybe next time I'll do it. And I don't go. And then the next time it comes around again, it's like, oh, maybe next time, because I don't have anybody to do it. Where now we're going to have a bit of accountability with each other. Like you said that you'd be willing to do this. So
yeah. And I would say the time that you guys do the first one, it's going to really set up this really cool momentum where you might even calendar the next one, because you'll already be moving and getting to see how much fun you're having just by doing it.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I said, a couple of them have just been out of town and other things coming up, so we just haven't met recently. But yeah, I think once we get back into our regular weekly get-togethers on Mondays, we'll start talking about it more. And especially now that the weather's going to be getting nicer, there's going to be some stuff outside that we'll want to do. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think we're going to end up doing a lot of things that we probably would not have done otherwise.
That's so cool. You'll have to update me after. And if you want, you can bring your friends on. We could do another interview and you guys can tell us how the experience was. That might be fun if they're interested.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's get some experiences first, and then we'll figure out if anybody else wants to come on. But yeah.
Yeah, because we could add it as that would be a new experience, all coming on a podcast together. And then.
Right. Yep.
So you could check that one off.
Definitely.
Well, this has been amazing. Thanks so much for coming on and doing the thing. I really appreciate all your feedback. I'd love to hear if you have one piece of advice for the listeners on doing the thing. What would your piece of advice be?
Ooh, you kind of touched on it a little bit ago, that people tend to regret not traveling. And whether it's traveling or doing something else, even if it's just local, just do it. You're going to regret not doing it. So whether it's, we talked about off camera about starting businesses or traveling somewhere or just doing little things around town, just get in the mindset of trying to do things. And if you don't have a lot of money, that's fine. You could find affordable ways to do it, but just go out and actually do things, because you're really going to regret not doing it.
Well, I'm so glad that you came on. I think this was so good. And it's funny, I think both the things that we talked about are going to be good for the bucket list challenge, because it's both doing new things and then also doing things that you love, right? And I think combining those two together will help me as I'm creating that challenge. So I do appreciate you doing this with me. And I'm excited to continue to get to follow along with you in the group that we're in and get to know you better that way as well.
You're very welcome, Stacey. I enjoyed talking here with you too. And yeah, we could definitely keep in touch and see how things go over the next few months.
And for the listeners, do the thing. Don't wait for opportunity. Create it.